Imagine you're a young musician. You've just finished recording the vocal tracks for your very first major label debut.
Oh, wow. So you're basically on top of the world.
Exactly. It's May 1991. You're walking a high school friend back to her hotel room in downtown Nashville when suddenly three men corner you in the shadows,
Just out of nowhere.
completely out of nowhere. Their intention is to assault your friend and, rob you both. And in a split second, you make a choice. You decide to fight back.
Right.
You were shot 4 times. Your friend manages to escape, but one of those bullets remains permanently lodged in your hip.
It is just, it's a staggering reality to process. That level of violence and sheer survival happening right as an artist is on the precipice of introducing themselves to the world.
Yeah, and it happened before the public had any idea who this man was or the colossal impact he was about to have on country music.
Absolutely.
So our mission today on this deep dive is to explore the story-driven biography of a true neo-traditional icon. We're talking about Tracy Lawrence.
And for those of you who know the genre, you obviously already know the voice. You know the fiddle and steel guitar arrangements that totally defined mid-90s radio.
Right, but the story underneath those records really matters because it maps out the brutal realities of the music business. We're looking at a trajectory that includes literal trials by fire, massive industry rebellion.
Yeah, and intensely publicized personal controversies, too.
Exactly. And eventually, a complete reinvention of how an artist survives when the corporate safety net just completely vanishes.
So we're pulling from biographical sources, chart histories, and album reviews to really map this out for you. We are tracking a path that starts in an Arkansas church choir, peaks in Nashville stadium tours, crashes through all these corporate mergers, and ultimately ends up setting historic chart records as a fiercely independent act.
It's a wild ride. Let's just start with the foundation. Tracy Lawrence was born in Atlanta, Texas in 1968, but he was raised in Foreman, Arkansas.
Right.
And from an early age, there's this distinct friction in his life. His mother heavily encouraged him toward the ministry, actually.
Yeah, he sang in the local Methodist church choir, but the lifestyle of a minister really did not align with his ambitions.
Not at all. He actually reflected on this tension later in his career. He said he was, quote, hell-bent on doing things my way.
And that rebellion manifested pretty quickly. By 15, he's already performing in local venues. By 17, he's fronting a local honky-tonk band.
He did make a brief attempt at formal education, right?
He did, yeah. He attended Southern Arkansas University in 1986 to study, of all things, mass communications.
Mass communications, wow.
Yeah, but the pull of performing simply overrode the classroom. He drops out to sing for a Louisiana-based band, and when that project dissolves, he finally takes the leap and moves to Nashville in 1990.
Okay, so the timeline of what happens next feels almost fabricated. He arrives in Nashville, works odd jobs in construction, and at a car dealership just to pay rent.
Pretty standard Nashville story so far.
Right. He enters local talent shows, starts getting nightclub gigs.
Right.
But by January 1991, he lands a showcase at the Bluebird Cafe, gets discovered by a talent manager, and signs a deal with Atlantic Records Nashville.
Which is just insane.
That is a 7-month turnaround.
Right.
I have to play skeptic here for a second. We always hear these mythological overnight success stories, but let's look at the industry landscape in 1990.
Okay, yeah, let's look at it.
Garth Brooks had just kicked the doors open. Country music was experiencing this massive commercial explosion. Was Lawrence actually a generational, undeniable talent, or did he just walk into a booming market at the luckiest possible second, like when labels were just signing anyone with a cowboy hat?
It's a fair question, but honestly, the 1990 boom actually made it exponentially harder for a new artist to cut through the noise, not easier.
Really? How so?
Because the genre was exploding, major labels were flooded with aspiring singers. Every executive in town was fielding hundreds of demo tapes a week. What secured that Atlantic contract in just 7 months wasn't luck. It was a highly specific sonic profile.
Okay, break that down for me.
Well, labels were actively engaged in this tug-of-war. They wanted the massive sales of pop crossover country, but they desperately needed to retain their core audience who, felt totally alienated by the glossy production.
I see.
Lawrence possessed this distinct warm baritone that critics immediately compared to Alan Jackson. He delivered a genuine, unpolished, neo-traditional honky-tonk vocal. A&R reps at Atlantic recognized he was the exact anchor they needed to balance their roster.
So he wasn't just a guy in a hat. Mechanically speaking, His vocal phrasing solved a very specific demographic problem for the label.
Exactly. He was the perfect puzzle piece.
But the machinery of that major label launch was violently halted by the incident we talked about at the Quality Inn.
Right.
He has his vocal tracks completed, the debut album Sticks and Stones is being prepped, and then comes May 1991.
He sustains 4 gunshot wounds while resisting the attackers who were targeting his friend, Sonja Wilkerson. 2 of the wounds required intensive life-saving surgery at Vanderbilt University Medical Center.
It's just unbelievable. And as you mentioned earlier, the surgeons had to leave one bullet embedded in his hip. Atlantic Records is forced to indefinitely halt the album's release while he undergoes this agonizing physical rehabilitation.
Yeah, and the physical toll is one thing, but the psychological whiplash is another. You go from fighting for your life in an ICU to almost immediately upon your recovery becoming a platinum-selling superstar.
It's a crazy pivot, because when Sticks and Stones finally hits the market in late 1991, the title track climbs the charts and hits #1 by January 1992. The album goes platinum.
And he follows it up in 1993 with his sophomore effort, Alibis, which goes double platinum and generates 4 #1 singles.
Just massive.
By 1996, Time Marches On hits double platinum as well, with its title track dominating the #1 spot for 3 consecutive weeks. It is an incredible run.
It really is. But let's analyze the mechanics of neo-traditional country marketing for a second. In a genre where authenticity and grit are the primary currencies, the label didn't just have a great vocalist anymore.
No, they had a documented survivor.
Right, the narrative of him taking bullets to protect a friend, that must have fundamentally altered how he was promoted to radio programmers, right?
The impact of that narrative cannot be overstated. Neo-traditional country relies entirely on the listener believing the artist has actually lived the heartbreak and the hardship they are singing about.
So the shooting basically proved his authenticity.
Exactly. When Lawrence debuted, the press naturally focused heavily on the shooting. It provided an undeniable, brutal validation of his grit.
The public wasn't just buying a record. They were buying into a man who embodied the chivalry and toughness that country music romanticizes.
The marketing and the reality just fused together perfectly. It gave him an instant aura of credibility that usually takes an artist decades to cultivate.
So he secures total control over his sonic identity and his public credibility, which makes what happens behind the scenes so compelling, because massive commercial success inevitably invites corporate interference.
Oh, always. You sell millions of records and suddenly the executives want to steer the ship.
Right. And this triggers a significant creative clash during the production of the Alibis album. What exactly went down there?
Well, the executives at Atlantic Nashville were analyzing chart data. They looked at the massive returns of another artist on their roster, John Michael Montgomery.
Oh, yeah. He was huge.
Yeah, he was dominating radio with these sweeping, highly polished romantic ballads. So the label pressured Lawrence to soften his edge and record similar material to capture that specific market share.
But this is where that hell-bent on doing things my way mentality resurfaces, right?
Precisely. He flatly refuses to abandon his upbeat, traditional honky-tonk sound.
Good for him.
He co-writes a track called Can't Break It to My Heart, fights the label to have it included and pushed as a single, and he actually wins the battle. The song goes straight to #1.
That is amazing. And that victory gave him tremendous leverage, I imagine.
Huge leverage. By proving his instincts were better than the boardroom's data, he essentially walled off his audio production from executive meddling.
He remained a strict traditionalist in the recording booth, insisting on prominent fiddle and steel guitar in his mixes.
Yeah, but that staunch purism in the studio makes his approach to visual media completely jarring.
Yes. You would expect a traditionalist to just stand on a stage with a guitar for his music videos. Instead, he goes completely avant-garde.
If you were watching CMT in the mid-90s, you remember this vividly. He teams up with director Mark Ball to create an interconnected sci-fi time travel narrative across multiple music videos.
It is essentially a 90s country version of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
It really is. It's a brilliant strategy. We are talking about the videos for If the Good Die Young, Texas Tornado, and I see it now.
Right.
At the start of each video, Lawrence is magically transported to a different historical era. He wakes up in period-accurate clothing, having to figure out his surroundings before the song kicks in.
I just love that. But mechanically, why take that risk? Why isolate the traditionalist audio crowd with high-concept theatrical visuals?
Because he understood the mechanics of television promotion in the 90s. CMT and TNN were massive drivers of album sales. You had to give viewers a reason not to change the channel.
So he made it a serialized story.
Exactly. By serializing the videos, he transformed a standard promotional tool into appointment viewing. Fans eagerly anticipated his next single just to see the next chapter of the time travel story.
That is so smart. He proved that honoring musical tradition didn't require visual stagnation.
And the gamble paid off immensely. By 1996, his videos were aired on CMT more frequently than any other artist in the genre.
Wow. Okay, so he has the hits, he has the creative control, he is dominating television. But as the late 90s approach, the pressure of fame begins to fracture his personal life.
Yeah, things take a turn.
And just a quick note to you as we dive into these legal records. Our goal here is not to take a side, condemn, or endorse any behavior.
Well,
We are simply laying out the facts as they were reported in our source material to understand the subsequent shift in his career.
Right. So the turbulence begins to make headlines in April 1994. Lawrence is involved in a highway incident in Wilson County, Tennessee.
What happened there?
According to reports, he confronted and followed home two teenagers, leading to charges of reckless endangerment and possession of an unlicensed firearm. He was placed on probation for a year, though those charges were eventually cleared.
Okay. But his personal life is also marked by significant upheaval around this time. He's been married 3 times, correct?
Yes. His first marriage to Frances Weatherford in 1993 ended in divorce in 1996. And this was following a tragic incident where a gas fireplace exploded in their home, injuring her and resulting in a miscarriage.
That is just awful.
It was devastating. He later marries Stephanie Drew in March 1997. It is this highly publicized industry event with hundreds of guests, including performances by Toby Keith and Kenny Chesney.
But by October of that same year, following a concert in Nevada, the marriage unravels amidst investigations of domestic abuse. They were actually already in the process of filing for divorce at that point.
Right, and the legal outcome of that October incident was a misdemeanor battery conviction, with the Las Vegas courts ordering him to donate $500 to a local women's shelter.
Furthermore, Billboard magazine reported at the time that the president of Atlantic Nashville suspended Lawrence from recording new material pending counseling.
Now, Lawrence later disputed the reality of that suspension, but the public relations fallout was undeniable.
We see this pattern frequently in entertainment, right? The structural integrity of an artist's career begins to shake apart under the weight of public scrutiny. But let's look at the mechanics of why this caused such a drastic commercial slide. Why couldn't the music just speak for itself?
Well, in the 90s country music ecosystem, radio program directors were the absolute gatekeepers. You could not bypass them to reach the audience.
Oh, right, there's no streaming yet.
Exactly. And those directors programmed their stations heavily around a family-friendly, polished image. They were highly sensitive to public scandal.
So when an artist generates negative press, program directors just pull their songs from rotation to avoid alienating advertisers and listeners.
Yes. The All-Music biography by Steve Huey explicitly notes this dynamic. He points out that Lawrence continued to release albums that garnered positive critical reviews during this period, but he completely lost his commercial momentum. The radio spins simply dried up.
And this personal and PR crisis collides with a massive structural earthquake in the music business. The industry is literally shifting underneath his feet.
It really is. The late 90s and early 2000s marked an era of aggressive corporate consolidation. Record labels were merging, restructuring, and purging their rosters left and right.
So what happens to this contract?
In late 2000, Atlantic Records makes the drastic decision to close its entire Nashville division. Lawrence's contract is absorbed by Warner Bros. Records, but the synergy is just gone.
Yeah, that rarely goes well.
It didn't. They released one album together before dropping him. He then pivots to DreamWorks Records. He actually secures a brief, powerful resurgence there with the 2004 hit Paint Me a Birmingham, proving his voice still resonated.
That's a huge song.
It was. But then the industry contracts again, and DreamWorks closes its doors in 2005.
Wow. Stop and consider that reality for a second. You are a multi-platinum artist. You dominated the entire decade of the 90s. You have a wall of #1 hits, and suddenly you are entirely without a label home.
The companies you work for literally cease to exist.
You're facing a digitized, completely transformed music industry. He has to learn how to survive from scratch.
And he refuses to chase another corporate contract. In 2006, Lawrence and his brother take the ultimate risk and establish their own independent record label, Rocky Comfort Records.
I always say, if a major label backing is like driving a speedboat, where you can pump millions of dollars into a marketing campaign and force a song onto the radio, running an independent label is like rowing a canoe against the tide.
That is a perfect analogy. And the first single he releases independently in August 2006 is Find Out Who Your Friends Are.
And initially, it performs exactly how you would expect an indie release to perform in a major label-dominated system, right?
Right. It stalls out. It lingers below the top 40 of the Hot Country Songs charts. But then they release the full album, which includes a bonus alternate version of the track featuring guest vocals from his longtime friends, Tim McGraw and Kenny Chesney.
The addition of McGraw and Chesney gave the track the spark it needed, but the mechanics of what happened next are what truly cemented Lawrence's legacy. It was not an overnight viral hit. It required grueling, persistent promotion.
It really did.
Explain how that works. How does a stalled song suddenly push to #1?
It comes down to the grind of radio promotion. At a major label, if a single doesn't show significant growth in radio spins within 10 to 12 weeks, the executives cut the funding, abandon the song, and move on to the next single.
Because they have the budget to pivot.
Exactly. An independent label like Rocky Comfort doesn't have a backup plan or a massive budget. What they have is stubbornness. They spend every single week calling individual radio station directors, begging for a few more spins.
Wow.
They scraped and clawed for single-digit growth week after week.
And that sheer refusal to quit results in a historic milestone. It took 41 weeks for Find Out Who Your Friends Are to reach #1 on the charts in 2007.
41 weeks.
At the time, it set the record for the slowest ascent to the top of the country charts in history. That is nearly an entire year of daily grinding effort for a single 3-minute song. And it ends up winning the CMA and the ACM Vocal Event of the Year.
It is the ultimate proof of concept for his entire career. McGraw and Chesney did not jump on that track for a paycheck. They did it out of deep industry respect.
Yeah, that really shows.
The 41-week climb proved that Lawrence's value was not tied to a boardroom or a corporate marketing machine. It was anchored by his relentless work ethic, his standing among his peers, and a fiercely loyal fan base that was willing to call radio stations and request that song for nearly a year straight.
And the adaptability he shows after that peak is just as impressive. Even when Rocky Comfort Records eventually closes due to the harsh financial realities of independent distribution, he doesn't retreat.
No, he launches another imprint, Lawrence Music Group.
He even pivots genres slightly, right?
Yeah, he releases a Grammy-nominated Christian country album called The Rock. And then in 2013, he embraces the new digital economy, using Kickstarter to fund the production of his album Headlights, Taillights, and Radios.
The Kickstarter move is a fascinating psychological shift for a legacy act. Instead of asking executives for an advance to pay for studio time, you're asking your hardcore fans to finance an album that doesn't even exist yet.
It requires a tremendous amount of trust.
Right. It shows he understood that the old model of chasing casual radio listeners was dead, and he successfully monetized his dedicated base. He later takes that same ambition into his 3-volume Hindsight 2020 project, managing his own catalog and legacy on his own terms.
We have tracked a massive sweeping arc today. We watched an Arkansas preacher's kid rebel to find his own sound. We saw him survive a brutal shooting and leverage that grit into multi-platinum stadium success.
We mapped the creative highs of time-traveling music videos and the commercial lows dictated by personal scandal and collapsing corporate labels.
Ultimately, we witnessed a masterclass in industry survival, an artist who rode a canoe against the tide for 41 weeks to claim his space in history.
Which brings us to a final thought to leave you with. We currently exist in a music ecosystem governed by algorithms. A song can blow up on social media on a Tuesday, generate millions of streams, and be completely forgotten by the weekend.
It's so true. The modern industry is obsessed with frictionless overnight virality.
But consider the weight and the endurance of a 41-week climb. It forces us to ask, does a true lasting legacy stem from the lottery ticket of instant fame? Or is it forged by a stubborn, gritty refusal to quietly fade away when the establishment assumes you are finished?
That is the exact question his discography demands we answer. You can either let the weight of the industry pull you under, or you can carry it with you week after week on the climb back to the top.
Beautifully said. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We will see you next time.